with that Joel Klatt, who called Ohio State and Michigan. He'll be calling Ohio State, Indiana. He's getting some good games. So I guess this is, we both love this sport. I guess where I feel bad. So Miami's going, we beat them head to head.
Yeah.
And Texas is going, we beat 3 top 10 teams. And the committee's like, well, Notre Dame didn't really have a quality win, but they had no bad losses. I don't know if that's how we should measure greatness. I like Notre Dame as a program. Doesn't Miami have a real case here?
Of course. Of course, Miami has a real case, and Texas has a real case. And there's so many ways to go. Let me just start with, like, the problem is obviously the format.
Right.
Obviously, right? Because we're trying to have this selection-based playoff, and it doesn't matter if you have computers do it or people do it. Like, it's subjective. And there's no way that you can rank the criteria, or at least they don't rank the criteria and tell us which one is going to take precedent over the other.
Right.
So there's all different types of criteria. You can take a head-to-head criteria or a resume criteria, the eye test criteria. Did you get to a conference championship game? What did your schedule look like, in particular in the non-conference? And yet we don't rank those. So what value does any of those criteria actually have towards the ranking? Well, we don't know. And I think that's the arbitrary nature of it is what's frustrating. I've argued for a long time that we need to define the path. You see, like, for instance, in every other sport, always and forever, what do we do to break tiebreakers, Colin?
Head-to-head.
The first one is head-to-head.
Yeah.
Always. Always. And so here's the thing with Notre Dame. I don't think they're just in. I know that they're not going to play another game, and Miami is not going to play another game, but they have this buffer that is BYU. And so if you actually play this out, I think Notre Dame is actually more likely to miss the playoff than make the playoff. And here's why. If BYU wins in the Big 12 championship game and beats Texas Tech, they get an automatic spot, and there's almost no scenario where Tech falls behind Notre Dame. Therefore, Notre Dame would fall out. Now, if BYU loses to Texas Tech, maybe similar fashion to the way they lost already this year when they played Tech, 29-7, it was a dominant victory for the Red Raiders. Wouldn't BYU almost assuredly just fall maybe 1 spot or 2 spots in the rankings behind Miami, which then would promote a direct comparison with what we're talking about? Two teams right next to each other, same record with a head-to-head result. So I think Notre Dame's actually in a really precarious spot right now.
Yeah, listen, you know me. I like big brands. I want Notre Dame and Miami and Texas all in. Right? Like, that's what I'm rooting for.
I think Texas is cooked. I don't see a way they get in.
I know, but it's unbelievable. Beat Oklahoma like a drum. Dominated Vandy. Dominated, and they lose to Ohio State by 7. From that point forward, Ohio State won by an average of 31. They're the only team that played a super close game in Columbus, 4 new offensive linemen, and you're like, best college defense probably either one of us has seen in half a decade, and they lose by a touchdown, and Texas didn't play well, and you're like, I don't know. Like, listen, they don't match up with Georgia. They just don't. Like, that happens. They don't match up with Georgia. Let me ask you this. Indiana scheduled a week out of conference schedule. Right now, they'd have a bye. What if Indiana gets smoked? What if it is 38-17, and it looks like the Indiana-Notre Dame game last year? What if Indiana gets smoked? What happens to them?
I don't think they fall out of bye territory, and the reason is that Oregon will act as a buffer. Remember, they beat Oregon. Yes. So, like, Oregon is their floor. Okay. So even if they fall down with what they've done this year, they're probably still going to remain in the top 4, or even if they were to get... Now, I don't think they'll get smoked. I think that's a very good and complete team. Now, did they play a soft non-conference? There's no doubt that they played a soft non-conference. But I don't see a situation where either the loser of the Big Ten championship game, Ohio State or Indiana, falls out of a position where they're getting a bye in the first round of the college football playoff.
Okay, what if Bama went to Georgia? It was honestly, one of the most perfect game plans I've ever seen. They beat Georgia in Athens. They were flawless. It was one of the best halves of football played by anybody this year. What if Georgia beats them? And by the way, Georgia and Kirby Smart don't beat Alabama much. Like that you talk about a matchup. Georgia doesn't beat Bama. Texas doesn't beat Georgia. What if Bama gets smacked? Can they get knocked out?
I think possibly, although the history and the precedent from the committee last year was that they weren't going to penalize teams for losing conference championship games. And we saw that when SMU lost to Clemson. You remember, and Clemson got the automatic berth, but then SMU stayed in the college football playoff. They went to Penn State and lost in the first round. So precedent would tell you that this committee is going to value conference championship games and not knock a team for losing that. Now, let me just say this sake of argument. Let's just pull ourselves out 30,000-foot view for a moment, because that would suggest that this committee is trying to protect or value conference championship games. And I would make the argument that in college football for the last 10 and 20 years, we have done a really poor job of trying to protect and value things that are obviously going to die, like amateurism and bowl games, for example. These are things that obviously don't fit in what's going to happen in the future of our sport. And the fact that they didn't move off of amateurism early led to the chaos that we have now with the transfer portal and the revenue share. The fact that they won't move off of bowl games gives us a regular season and then playoff that leaks into the NFL playoffs, that leaks into the transfer portal late into January. So we're not nimble in college football. And if you protect the conference championship game, the writing is on the wall, Colin. These games are being devalued. There's no reason to protect those. So if Bama were to get smacked, I could see a situation where, depending on what happens in the BYU Texas Tech game, they get in, maybe Miami gets in, and maybe, they take another look at Texas in that regard. But I do think that we need to start putting the right value in the right spots. I think that we need to start talking about defining the path to the playoff rather than having a selection-based committee playoff. These things would be better for the sport. Not to get too long-winded, but just for an example, imagine this weekend if we had a play-in weekend, and this didn't live in a committee room, but it lived on the field, where we had, based on where you finished in your conference, automatic bursts per conference, maybe 4 each for the big guys, SEC and Big Ten, maybe 2 each for the ACC and the Big 12. And then you would get matchups this weekend, Colin, like Texas at Texas A&M, winner goes to the playoff. BYU, Utah, winner goes to the playoff. Miami, Duke, winner goes to the playoff. So we would be able to say, hey, listen, rather than just sitting there and watching your TV and seeing if a committee puts you in, you control your own fate. Go play a football game for 60 minutes, and if you can win that game, then you're going to go on into a 14-team playoff. That's what I would do. Yeah. But no one's making me commissioner yet. If you've got that power, please do so.
If I was commissioner, I would say head-to-head 1, quality wins 2. That to me should be, clarity would be pretty easy. I mean, Texas would be in, Notre Dame would not be. Like, head-to-head matters, quality win, because I want better scheduling.
I would take it away from at large. I don't like this idea that we're just like selecting teams. Now, even if you define the criteria and valued them, as you're saying, in a particular order, that would help. That would certainly help. I would just rather put it on the field. I would rather have a play-in weekend. A play-in weekend with 14 teams would create more value at the top because there would only be 2 buys. So you're really creating a top-end incentive for those teams to play hard late into the season, the best teams in the country, and more access and control at the bottom. That's what I would do.
Okay, I got 3 things. I'm going to get to Penn State, Lane Kiffin. Before I do that, I can see Ryan Day wants to win every game, but the conference championship for like Ohio State means nothing. I don't want guys hurt. My takeaway is, and I also am going to have to play somebody. I don't want them seeing, I want them to have to go back 8 games to find some of my tricks. I could see Ohio State saying, any player that's kind of banged up, you're not playing, and kind of doing a vanilla playbook. And then they lose, because the bottom line is, if I beat Michigan and win a natty, nobody gives a rip about Indiana. You beat Michigan, you win a natty. So I guess my question is it possible we're going to get a really flat, uninspired Buckeye team this weekend?
I don't think so, because they've been business-like the entire year. It didn't matter if we saw them at, I saw them play Rutgers, I saw them play Illinois, and they were the same every single week. And I feel like we're going to get the same business-like approach from the Buckeyes. Let's also keep in mind, this is a program None of these players have won a Big Ten title. This is not like old hat for Ohio State. We might feel like that because we've seen Ohio State of recent vintage, but this program hasn't won a Big Ten title since 2020. Wow. They're going to want to go out there and put their best foot forward. There's also more on the line when you think about the Heisman Trophy. Julian Saint's going to have to play well in order to win the game, in order to win the Heisman Trophy. So I still think that there's a lot on the line. The number 1 seed overall in the playoff is going to be beneficial. You'd rather play the number 4 team in the country in the semifinal than the number 2 or 3 team in the semifinal. So all of those things I think will be incentive for them to go put their best foot forward.
Okay, let's get to Kiffin. Listen, I've said don't marry the rock star and be shocked when he says, I got to go on tour for a couple of months.
Yeah.
Ole Miss would have signed up for where they're at today 5 years ago.
Sure.
Hey, you'll number 1 offense in the country, 11 wins, but he's going to burn you on the way out. Ole Miss would have signed up for that. So I don't have, when you go into business or you go into a relationship, as long as you get full disclosure, and there was on Lane Kiffin, I don't have a lot of sympathy for Ole Miss. They benefited just like everybody that hires Lane does. Your offense gets better. You get talked about. There's controversy and social media. I mean, I guess the whole thing doesn't bother me as much as it probably bothers everybody else. Does it bother you?
I just, everything that you said is correct. Nothing you said is wrong there. Yeah, I mean, he's got the 5 messiest exits in maybe football history. You know, I mean, think about it. Al Davis with the overhead projector. You got the Tennessee debacle. He was left on the tarmac at USC. Saban told him to kick rocks before the national championship game, and now here at Ole Miss. So everything that you're saying, yes, if you're Ole Miss, again, Ole Miss, the program, the administration, I'm sure that this is kind of like, yeah, maybe this was always in the cards, or certainly we could expect this. But I think of it not from the Ole Miss perspective, and I think of it from the player's perspective. If you're one of those players and you're sitting in the meetings in August and early September, and they're talking about team first and committing and let's go achieve something and here are our team goals. Well, he just left that team and they are going to feel spurred. And trust me, like you're seeing articles out there where some of these players are pushing back on this narrative that Lane, wanted to coach and they wanted him to coach. And they're like, no, we feel pretty betrayed by Lane Kiffin, and rightly so. Listen, I don't begrudge this man his movement, and he's going to go, and he thought LSU was going to be a better opportunity for he and his family. More power to him. But that doesn't mean that there are not consequences to those decisions. And he did leave a team high and dry. And he left those players high and dry. That's going to hurt his credibility moving forward. And he also went to a place that, let's face it, is not as sound foundationally. They might have more resources, but it's certainly a lot more crazy at LSU. It's like, listen, you can go with a 6 to prom, and that 6 is going to be committed to you. Yeah. You take the 9, she might be crazy.
All right. That's a good way to put it. Okay. You and I did not like Penn State. They did not like, you and I didn't like Penn State abruptly canning James Franklin. Well, now what's happened is the power brokers who run this sport, the agents, are freezing out Penn State. And they have the recruiting class. I'm surprised they haven't called me. They're not recruiting anybody. Montana is going to have a better recruiting class today than Penn State. So what do you think happens? It's a good job.
It's a good job, but it unfortunately for them, and I know the people involved, it has been mismanaged. I think that they had a plan when they fired James Franklin, and I think that plan involved Curt Cignetti. And Curt Cignetti was like, nope, that ain't my bag. And once that happened, then they were behind the 8 ball, and now they've gotten passed up by these other programs. So I think, here's the thing. I think that Penn State went after Kalani Sitake pretty hard, and Crumble Cookie came in and said, our cookies are delicious and they're making a lot of money, and no. And if you don't know that, the Crumble Cookie guy is a BYU guy, and he came in with a lot of it. It's a big meme, and it's fantastic. So now I think that there's probably a couple of guys that they're still in talks with and trying to get. I think Brian Daboll is still in play. I think Jeff Brom at Louisville is still in play. And the fact that it hasn't happened yet, and today, by the way, is National Signing Day, early signing day. Recruits can sign to your school today. And Penn State doesn't have a coach, which is wild. It speaks to the possible mismanagement of what's gone on, or at least it's going off the rails. And they don't have a coach, which also leads me to believe that something is up their sleeve. Colin, I think that they are targeting a coach that is still playing this week. And if you just go process of elimination, this is not information that I've heard from anybody. If process of elimination, you think, well, Kirby's not going anywhere. Sataki told him no. Joey McGuire's not going anywhere. Both guys in the American at Tulane and North Texas, Summerall and Eric Morris, they already have a place to go. Is it Tony Elliott at Virginia? Possibly. Manny Diaz at Duke? Possibly. Or is it Kalen DeBoer at Alabama? I think that they might be going after a guy that is coaching this week, which is why it's bleeding into the signing day.
Kalen DeBoer, by the way, is a Midwest guy, isn't he?
Got his start in South Dakota.
How about that?
Again, I haven't, no one's told me that officially, but if you just play that out, like, why do you not have a coach yet? He's got to still be coaching.
Klatt, that's a pretty good closer right there. You just went Mariano Rivera on us. That was a pretty good close right there.
Cutter in on the hands. Just
Okay, well, I'm going to enjoy the games. You have Indiana, Ohio State. I like Ohio State. Man, you're getting good games.
Love it.
Did you get a job promotion here at the company? They're giving you good games now.
No. They said that I've been doing a good job on these hits. So this is it's reward for doing a good job here.
Joe Klatt, good seeing you, buddy.
See you, brother.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here. College football on Fox.